Yeah, let me just change this later. I'll just check the scans. So, um, your argument is that Goku and Beerus created a shockwave that affect the afterlife, and like actually they just the complete macrocosm. And you argue that the other world is has no concept of time and transcendence over dimensionality, therefore
Yes,
universal.
yes.
Okay, yeah, okay. So if there is no concept of space and time in other world, then why would there be a cause or change when Goku and Beerus affect this in case? Because the shockwaves traveling there, like trying to like destroying it, just occurs on like a physical change.
Okay, why would change entail that there's, are you implying that there being change and physical movement implying that it requires time?
No, no, I mean it implies causality. Yo, you just mute. So yeah, basically like this um so like when you like affect a structure that is like atemporal and aspatial, right? You can't necessarily affect that is because it doesn't have like a structure to begin with, and it's not really like spatial and all that. It isn't like with cause and effect and all that because it by definition literally lacks spatial properties. So Goku affecting it, causing a change to the afterlife, is effectively like refuting no concept of space and time. Yeah, you know that.
I mean, that's presupposing that Goku actually did create a cause and change within the afterlife. Keyword,
Wait.
it
So,
was.
is it okay? You can continue. Go ahead.
See, keyword, you're trying to say that Goku causing some form of change debunks him being able to destroy a realm that has no concept of space and time. And even if you wanted to argue this, right, it does not matter because the narrative just shows that they're going to destroy the universe. And there is nothing contradicting this because it's literally shown, and it's literally shown that their power literally goes beyond the macrocosm itself and beyond the afterlife that has no concept of space and time. And even if you wanted to argue causality, right? Causality, right, as a whole encompasses dimensionality as a whole. I hope you understand that, right? Because without causality, dimensionality can't exist. And by default, if causality, right, encompasses dimensionality, then by default, even if you want to say go perfect causality of the afterlife, which I know it does not necessarily entail that there's space and time, it doesn't matter. It will still be universal.
Wait, Divine Angel. So you said that it'll presuppose there's a change to begin with, but isn't Goku and Beerus shaking it affirms a change, and the fact it's already been stated to destroy the macrocosm, destroying something is a form of change. I hope you know that. And for like the second argument, like it beyond the macrocosm, I don't necessarily understand why that would help. The argument on your case is because again, if you were to destroy something, like even if it's beyond what you view as your physical constraints, it would still not make sense to destroy or like affect something that is atemporal and aspatial, because by definition atemporal and aspatial things aren't governed by change nor causality nor causal relationships within that thing. Yeah, basically.
So, number one, right? Nothing implies that there's any form of change, and the keyword destroy is the same thing as change. What is there implying that destroying something entails that there's change happening? I want to see the evidence for that. And two, right, you're saying that it's impossible to destroy something atemporal because there is no change, but the issue is that this will be just an appeal to reality because the fiction follows a imaginative authority, right? The author, right, can write these characters destroying a temple, and even if you think again that just because they're destroying a temple, whatever contradiction, it does not matter. It's still within the narrative, so it doesn't matter what you argue against it, whether you try to use whatever change or whatever, it's still shown within the narrative that they can destroy and affect the structure, regardless of what they argue, etc., etc. So it doesn't matter. Okay.
Um, like your mic kind of cut out, but I'll just explain. I'll just like refute the arguments that I basically explained currently. So, to start off, you said like that would be an appeal to reality because fiction is made from the imagination of the author. that apparently grants these narratives to be the case, right?
Yes.
I mean, why would that be the case in there? I mean, yeah, just because it's imaginative, why would that be implying the case? Because you can't really like um imagine not like contradictions and all that. So why would be in a lyricist like it could like the author could intend this to occur, but in actuality it cannot occur.
I mean, then by definition, the problem is that you technically need to provide evidence that imagination is bound by any set laws, which there is no evidence. Such is the
Wait, what do you
case.
wait? Why? Okay, okay. So why would I need evidence? First, for example, okay. So imagination is like in conjunction to like our mind, right?
Of course.
So okay. So let me give you an example. If you imagine an apple existing and not existing at the same time, would there be any concrete identity to the apple in itself? If I'm gonna tell you like that, like if you were to visually express in your mind an apple existing and not existing at the same time, like would that make sense to you?
Ooh, that's literally what fiction is. Fiction is not meant to make sense. It does not
Yeah.
necessarily have to make sense.
Yeah,
Point.
okay, not making sense. Yeah, but what I'm saying is if it's not making sense, it could just imply it was never literal in the first place. And plus the fact that this already gives like a concrete argument as to why this wouldn't even make sense. Because for one, if there was an identity, right? If its identity as a whole, as the other world is like universal, and saying that it's aspatial and atemporal, it can be affected by change. Yeah, it would contradict it that there will be causality in the first place. Then if we go upon the arguments, what is true in this case? Is it true that it is governed by causality or it's not governed by causality? But if you're going to say it's a contradiction, both things are true, implying there isn't going to be any concrete identity. So you can't necessarily visually like imagine these things with like coherent understanding, like for example, consistent logic and all of that, blah blah blah. So yeah, that's what I'm
All
saying.
right. Just even if you bring up, oh, the apple, the author imagined the apple exists and not existing at the same time, all that just means is that the apple once existed and then the author just imagined it does no longer exist. This doesn't necessarily mean that there's any contradiction. All that just means that the apple no longer exists. And two, right, again, why would destroying something entail that there's any change? And two, just again, you're still not providing evidence that there was any change within the afterlife or destroying something until there's any change. This is
All right.
irrelevant.
So yeah, okay. So at first, I want you to repeat what you said at the first time, but the second one I did hear. Here, I mean here. So basically, the second one is like you said. How is destroying something a form of change? Can you like demonstrate to me where there is a case where a temporal and a spatial thing can change when, I mean, can be destroyed when it doesn't even have a form in itself?
Bro,
I mean, we could go by
literally.
definition of destruction if you want.
Okay, but even if you want to go by the definition of destruction, even if, right, destruction really means destroying something to the point it no longer exists, correct? So, realistically, even if you try to prove that there's change, right, this does not inherently mean that the afterlife is like debunked or no longer non-spatial, non-temporal. Even if you did try to prove there's any change, just because there is change does not necessarily mean that there's any spatial constructions within the afterlife. I hope you understand
Wait,
that.
dude. I just hope you realize something, right? Because, like, okay, I understand causality is a non-physical phenomenon that actually precedes space-time, and the causal things about physical process is from like causality, and what makes it like like let me see, coherently understandable, right, or justifiable. But the thing is here, what I'm seeing is something that is not like atemporal, aspatial doesn't require physical process, and what I'm saying is if there is a change which occurrence based upon causality, it would still imply that it would still imply a contradiction because again, a change is a byproduct on physical process, which is likely no, not likely, completely impossible to even argue this thing is logical in your stance. But anyways, for this argument, I'm just gonna send this right. So the action of process or causing so much damage to something that it no longer exists or cannot be repaired. That is what destruction means by definition. And we can go upon the other definition in Oxford, like, dictionary. But to basically say there is an action and a cause when when you are planning to destroy something. So logically speaking, if you were to have an action or a cause for processing or destroying something, there would be cause and change within that thing. So, like, you can argue analytically this would be like contradiction based upon like what I
Okay,
said. So destruction requires
okay,
cause. And for the wait, chill. I'm not done. So the first argument you have, I didn't really hear that much, so I kind of want you to repeat it kindly, please. But yeah, you can have
oh,
your turn. Go ahead.
all right, all right. Again, again, even if you're gonna say, oh, it's impossible for there to be any change, right? Even if you argue, aka there is change happening within the afterlife, which right we did not prove, or even if destruction requires change, right? It does not necessarily entail that okay, this thing like, is happening within a spatial and temporal realm, right? Entails a contradiction. All that just means is that they can be destroyed to the point it no longer exists. And even if you're going to argue oh, change and effect, right? It does not matter because it doesn't really debunk anything because it really just it still exists, right? It's in dimension right up in the pan, and it's showing that Goku and Beerus can affect this realm, justifying doesn't just because there's change does not necessarily mean that it's impossible to destroy, especially as we're actually even if and you can go by your argument that there can be change in something as spiritual as temporal, right? Doesn't debunk the fact that it does not exist. It still exists, it's still there, and we can see them destroying it. Trying to argue that oh, uh, because it doesn't mean that oh, there's no requirements for change, therefore it's a contradiction would just be a non-separable. It does not work like this.
Oh, okay. So I'll just okay. So I'm pretty sure I actually already addressed that. So I think the first argument you said was right. Like it doesn't necessarily like for example destruction like necessarily implies a change, but it doesn't matter because atemporal and aspatial thing being destroyed just means that it is like driven to non-existent because of the fact that oh these attacks damage it. But like and why would that make sense in your case? Because again, that would still imply a change happening to destroy something. Actually, it doesn't even exist in the first place. So why would it be destroying to non-existent if it was non-existent in the first place? And for the second argument, right? I'm just gonna like say this like divine angel. I know you're gonna argue appeal to reality and all that shit and all of these things happening and all that shit, but again, I'm just gonna say why would this be the case? If you were to say oh this can be destroyed in fiction, it'll be imaginative, it'll explain why something that is out of versal can be destroyed, but then again, why would that be taken as literal? And even if you were to argue oh this is literal, it would imply there is two concrete identities that are existing like simultaneously. For example, if I were to say there's an apple existing and not existing at the same time, if both propositions were simultaneously true, then what is the concrete identity, the original identity of this subject or this object in this case? So if we were to say
One,
that like both existing and non-existing is both true at the same time, which again doesn't analytically follow. So yeah, that's basically it. You can have your turn.
obviously, fine, sure. The apple existing and not existing at the same time, obviously, I can admit it is illogical, but illogical things can still happen within fiction, though. Even if we argue that this apple does no longer exist, which is irrelevant to my point, because the afterlife is really shown, right, to exist. Right? It's unit of dimensions. It has no space and time. And hold on, can you repeat like the argument of the like spatial whatever?
Spatial, like
A space what
okay.
you argue.
Oh, atemporal and aspatial. Okay. Um,
Wait,
let me
hold,
go back
hold on.
to my arguments.
Hold on. I
So
remember you
yeah,
said
yeah,
it
I'm
does.
basically saying, that atemporal and aspatial things cannot exist, right? Logically speaking, yeah, it's because it doesn't exist in the first place. There is no spatial properties and all that shit, which actually qualifies for like existence as a whole. Abstract things, may you argue abstract existence, that's still technically not existence in itself. is what I'm saying is because they're not non-physical in a sense that atemporal and aspatial thing doesn't have a cause, doesn't have an existence, doesn't have an end, doesn't have a beginning, and all of that. That is non-existential by definition. So affecting something that is like that would be redundant. And what I'm gonna say is you can't affect something that is non-existent to something that is non-existent is because that would already be doing basically nothing. Is what I'm gonna say, and just contradictory. So yeah, that's basically what I'm arguing on atemporal and aspatial thing. I hope that's what you're looking for. So yeah.
So you're saying just because it's as spatial and atemporal, it does not exist. But, well, this is just, an invincible ignorance to a very huge extent, simply of the fact, again, the Aflac transcend dimensions, so it can't make sense that it does not exist, and it has no space and time. And even if you say, oh, it requires cause and effect only, I will agree that there is probably cause and effect in the afterlife, right? But here's the thing, that does not debunk the afterlife being out reversal and it being non-existent as you're trying to argue it, because it's literally right there, clearly stated that it transcends dimensions that humans cannot perceive, keyword cannot perceive, which implies that the afterlife itself transcends dimensions that humans cannot even see, which includes 5D, 6D, etc. And there is no space and time, and it still exists and it transcends space and time. So your argument really does not make sense, really. I mean, by default, if you're saying, oh, it doesn't exist because it's a spatial atemporal, and it's literally transcend dimension, really, it's just an invincible ignorance. No offense, bro.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We got you. No offense, obviously, because there's no toxicity. But to let's elucidate again. Goku Negs. I hope you understand that that just presupposes transcending dimensions. And I actually no, it's not presupposing transcending dimensions. I'm saying that it presupposes that outer reversal in this case can exist. Which I'm gonna just say this in like simple terms. Okay, the thing here is I'm not arguing that outer versal is a contradiction. What I'm arguing is the attributes that you affirm on otherworld would be a contradiction. Because guess what? What I'm saying is if this otherworld in question is atemporal and aspatial, affecting it would contradict it. What I'm saying is because if you affect it, there's a cause, and if there's a cause, then there's causality. And if you were to say there's no concept of time, that's a contradiction by default. Now, that would already remove the attribute of no concept of space time. And if we grant by the attribute or argument that you say that this thing is transcending dimensions that cannot be perceived, that would already just make it like, I don't know, 7 dimensional or 6 dimensional, which would be like not universal, which would not provide justifications for your stance. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm not implying. Okay, okay. So you can imply this would be out of versal, but I'm saying the attributes that
Um,
affirm this is out of versal would just be like redundant in my argument. That's what I'm saying.
One, you're presupposing causality and effect is always attributed to space time without any evidence. And two,
Um,
yeah,
wait.
because what you're
Okay.
saying is that, right, listen,
Uh,
Axiom, what you're saying is that because, oh, cause and effect,
yeah.
right,
Wait,
because
what's
cause and effect entails a form of spatial temporal axes, right? Even if there was cause and effect, that doesn't necessarily mean that, oh, X has time. All that just means is that X, right, you can still be an outer versal being, right, and still create X, Y, Z. And fine, even if there's causality, right, it doesn't necessarily mean that there is space and time without any evidence suggesting there is space and time. So realistically, technically, you technically need to prove the burden that space and time are attributed to causality.
Okay. Well. So this is gonna be my last argument. I think we should go to conclusions after this, and end the debate because yeah, this was pretty fun. It's okay if some of you guys like record this and upload. You can post this, but make sure the thumbnail and the title and the comments are neutral and respective. All right, because I don't like toxicity. But anyways, just to refute the arguments, this will be my last argument, like refuting yours exactly. Like I'm not saying that causality is unnecessary. I mean, no. It is a necessary attribute. But I'm not saying that dimensionality require like causality requires dimensionality to exist, because what I'm saying is causality is a phenomenon that precedes space-time spatial process that makes this physical process possible is because causality is causal change, causal relationships, and all of that. It's a non-physical phenomenon, and it is the thing that causes this, like the existence of our universe and all that shit. The Big Bang is the expansion of the universe, the cause of space-time. So causality is what makes space-time like existential in a way. So I'm saying is right, if something that it doesn't have physical process, aka atemporal and aspatial thing, you affecting that implies that you are affecting nothing, and the fact that there would be a contradiction because again causality is what precedes physical phenomenon, physical process, causal relationships. That is the case, but atemporal and aspatial thing aren't acquired to that. They don't necessarily need that, and that's what I'm saying is. I said no, it's not. They don't necessarily need that. They objectively don't need that. It's because they do not have physical process. So again, it would still be a contradiction by default. That's what I'm saying. But yeah, you can go
But
ahead and give your
earlier,
arguments. And wait. You can go ahead and give your arguments, and then we can go to conclusions. So yeah, it was.
hold on,
You can go ahead.
hold on. Earlier, did you not just say causality has no physical thing in the first place?
No. Okay. So yeah, I'm saying causality in itself, the objective, like the proper existence of causality, the thing that precedes space-time is non-physical, because at the start of the universe there was nothing, and causality is what precedes space-time. The expansion of the universe is the expansion of space-time, which then affirms that this phenomenon actually caused the physical process of space-time in itself. Yeah.
But that just justifies that. So you do realize by using this argument, saying, "Oh, if causality is non-physical, right?" But you're conceding to the fact that it can cause physical changes, right, below itself, right, space, time, etc., and it still exists, right? And by definition, the afterlife has no space and time, right? And it can be causality and non-physical, but it still proceeds time as below dimensional, then by default, destroy the afterlife would just mean that the afterlife upscale all dimension, has no space and time, and perceives all spatial temporal entities the same way causality does. Like using that example would just really just prove my point that the afterlife can still transcend space time and there will be no contradictions via the fact that, as you said yourself, causality has no physical thing, right? But and it still perceives the universe as lower, all space time as lower, justifying that like it's possible to destroy causality as a whole, which also includes the afterlife, which precedes all of space and time by default. Isn't that argument just
Okay.
upstate?
Yeah. Okay, wait. So you're saying that since causality is not physical and precedes space-time, that implies that the destruction of the other world would be possible because the causal change that affirms there are non-physical? Is that what you're arguing?
Well, well, actually, yes.
Okay, yeah. So what I've said before, causality is a phenomenon, right? That precedes space, time, and all that shit. But what I'm saying is the causal start of destruction is what I'm saying is required to a process of spatial temporality. And the fact that I've said this before, atemporal and aspatial things aren't supposed to govern by causality, causal change, causal relationships, etc., etc. If you were to say causality is non-physical and all that shit, generally doesn't even make your argument sensical in a way. It's because again, something that doesn't exist, a temporal spatial thing, is something that isn't governed by causal change. There won't any be causal change to begin with, even if causality is non-physical. It's still a phenomenon that only precedes space-time, that only cause physical process to space-time. It was never shown to do that. In atemporal thing is because one thing, atemporal and spatial thing, aren't bound by spatial process. It isn't clearly made by spatial process to begin with. So that's what I'm saying. Yeah, we
Hold
can go
on.
to conclusion.
Uh,
You can give wait. You can give your arguments, then we can go to conclusions, and yeah, we can end this debate. It's pretty fun though.
All right, sure. Do you agree causality has space and time within it?
Do I agree? No, I mean, what I'm saying is spatial properties require causality. It's a byproduct of causality. It requires causal change. That's what I'm saying with space time. But causality doesn't necessarily require dimensionality in itself. Yeah, it's not
Oh,
vice
oh,
versa.
oh, 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 oh. Oh, thank you very much, Axiom. You just proved that non-spatial temporal axes non-spatial temporal realms, right, can exist beyond and above dimensionality, which just supports my outer crystal scaling rather than debunks it, because it also goes under the proposition that my, outer world scaling justifies that also the afterlife is now space and time and transcend dimension and supersedes all dimensionality as lower and transcends all this by using causality, right? Arguing causality and conceding to the fact that there is no space, no necessity for spatial temporal attributes, and it still supersedes dimensionality, which logically correlates to the afterlife doing the same thing. Then by default, it just proposed that the afterlife transcend dimensions, and it's possible for a realm that does not necessarily need spatial temporal attributes to exist and transcend dimension. Duh. Anyways, yeah, we can end this if you want to. Yeah, let's
Yeah,
end
yeah,
this.
yeah. Okay, okay. W